Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia, and today it's time for Friday Reads on September 27th. We are in the home stretch, only a few more days, just over the weekend for September, and then October begins. If you haven't seen my October TBR, I put it up a couple days ago. All of the plans. I'm really excited. I love my lineup for October, and I'm enjoying the last few stories in my shorty September project. There'll be one more video summing up the last batch of stories, and then we are into October. And thank goodness, because this past reading week was kind of an off week. Last week I had this glorious roundup of 2 weeks full of marvelous, fabulous books, things that'll probably be on my top 10 list. And then, the tide just sometimes has to swing back the other way. So this was a week, it wasn't terrible, but I read two novels. I read two novels, and they were both just kind of disappointing. And then I am really enjoying the nonfiction book that I'm reading, and I have started something I think will be really great for the weekend. So let's talk about TV for just a minute. We are watching Only Murders in the Building. I don't know how many episodes. I guess we're about halfway through. This is a good one. This is the fourth season. They have been a little bit uneven in quality. This one's been really good, really funny. Slow Horses has been good. It's also in its fourth season. Tonight, I'm so excited. The baking show is back. The Great British Baking Show. The problem right now is this is the season of trying to not see the results because they air it in the UK earlier in the same week, and then a few days later it comes out on Netflix. Here, I snoozed that page on Facebook, but it just kind of pops up. You open up a news feed and it'll say something, and I don't want to know. I want to be surprised. So it's kind of hard to dodge the spoilers, but it is Bake Off season. It must be fall. Oh, and the other show that we have tried, we've watched a couple episodes, is called Midnight Family. It's a Spanish language show. It's a Mexican TV show. I don't know if it was made for Netflix but it's set in Mexico City. It's in Spanish, but there's subtitles, and it's about this family that runs a private ambulance, and it's this dad and three kids, two kind of young adult kids, and then one little boy, and they ride around all night long. They're kind of illegal. Their license is permanently in process. And also the narrator is the young woman who is a med student who is not supposed to be working in the field during her studies, but she is. So at school they think that she's this crazy partier because she shows up late with bags under her eyes every day, but it's because she's out on the family ambulance, and they're just struggling to make ends meet. And so the part that's really good in the show is the dialogue in the family. It's always kind of chaotic, and they're trying to get through this very congested city, and the private ambulances are competing with one another to get to the place where somebody has called, and they get kickbacks from the hospital for bringing them people, and there's a lot of funny dialogue in the family. But it does that thing that every show, all kinds of rescue type shows, if it's about firefighters or ambulance drivers or whatever, there's always something that just gets, some big disaster, something that gets out of hand, and they kind of stick those in, and I'm like, okay, whatever. I get back to the family drama. So the best character is the little boy, though. The character's name is Julio. He's excellent. The little actor, he gets the best lines, he gets the funniest parts, and he also does a really great job of conveying the fear and the trauma of being pressed into action in these life and death ambulance scenes. And he's probably 10 years old. And he's also privy to some family secrets. So we've enjoyed that so far too. And we have a couple of ideas for other shows to fill in when we get to the end of one of these. All right, so let's talk about the books. And I'm going to try not to be a Debbie Downer, but I had problems. The first one is going to come under the category of unpopular opinions, because people all over BookTube are talking about how much they loved this book, Mammoth, by Eva Baltasar and translated by Julia Sanches. I had a problem. And it's not that the book is not well written, because it is. I had a personal problem with content in this book, and so let's just talk about it. Um, Previously, I read Boulder. Really love Boulder. That's why I got this. My plan was to get this and Permafrost. Now I'm not so sure, but coming off of Boulder, I was really excited to read this book, and I was expecting it to be kind of offbeat, and I expected the main character to probably be kind of a unusual person, maybe a prickly person. All this, all this did bear out, and that's fine. That's not the problem. So let's just talk about what the book's about and what I liked, and then where we parted ways. So this is about a young woman. Just like in Boulder, she's not really named specifically, but at one point in the story, she gets a job of a server, a bartender, and they call her Mammoth, though they call her the Catalan word for mammoth, which I can't remember. So that's kind of the only identifier that she's given in the story. But she is a young woman who's disenchanted with her life in Barcelona. And first of all, it's almost like an exercise in how different a person could be from me or any version of me, because she was really young, like 23, 24. She's living in Barcelona. She's a grad student. She has this job, sort of a project where they're collecting interviews from these elderly citizens, but she's feeling like it's lacking in meaning. And so she quits that, and she goes through a series of dead-end jobs that just don't fit her or suit her. And so then she decides that she decides a couple things. She really wants to experience pregnancy, and she wants to be isolated in the middle of nowhere. So she buys an old car, she loads it up, she goes out, and she finds a place to rent and in the middle of nowhere. And so I'm thinking, there is no point in my life where I would be living in a vibrant, famous city, being young and single, and think, you know what I really want to do? I want to get pregnant and live in a run-down, filthy old farmhouse out in the countryside, completely isolated. And no. So, but that's what she wants. So she seeks it out, and she does find this place. And this all of this in the book I really did enjoy, even though it was so different. And a couple of things that I liked in particular. This is sounding like a good review so far, isn't it? Early on in the story, when she's working with some senior citizens, and she goes to these nursing homes and conducts these interviews, and I loved this description of a place that she goes that wealthy older people lived. They dress elegantly most of the time in riding jackets, their pleated trousers just so. They were partial to neckerchiefs and maroon tones. Having gone through life with their heads held high, they were now learning to dye the same way, manes brilliant white, ear and nose hair trimmed. Loneliness circled them like a vulture. They shrugged it off, never making excuses for their kids or showing off a single photo of a small grandchild. They adorned their golden age with Vivaldi concerts and Bach suites, and yet seemed to be already dead, as if their hearts beat solely out of inertia. Most of them have AIDS, robust women with short hair and uniforms that hugged their bodies. The seniors leaned on them as they would on their mothers, wielding the dregs of their power. They sent the women on errands and insisted on being pushed down gravel garden paths in their wheelchairs. The women wheeled them this way and that, read them their correspondence, and rubbed oil on their diabetic feet. Just that line, wielding the dregs of their power, really, really loved that. Just the difference between an elderly person who has been used to this privilege and respect and deference versus some other kind of person. I could get that. Okay, so she goes out, and I also really, even though I could not relate to it, I did really respect her energy and her dedication in cleaning this massively disgusting farmhouse that she has found for this cheap rent, and just her dedication. She chops wood until she's almost immobilizes herself. She bakes bread with no recipe, and she makes this horrible brick, eats it anyway because she made that bread, damn it, and she's going to eat it. So I was really kind of riding along with it. And then it got to a extremely brutal scene of animal cruelty. And it was a long, extended, protracted scene in great detail. And the character was just her that same verve and energy and problem solving and all that funneled into this particular scene that I couldn't take it. So I didn't know it was coming until it was too late, and it was deep in the book. And since the book is so short, I continued on and finished the book. If that had struck in a longer book at some point, I would have just DNF'd right at that point, and that would have been the end. But since I was kind of not that far from the end anyway, I went ahead and read the rest to see what happened. The ending also, I was just kind of, what? So no. And if you have any problems with scenes of violence with animals, I would suggest you select a different book besides Mammoth, and I do not plan to keep this book. So then I moved on to Real Americans by Rachel Khong. And I've been excited to read this book for a few months. I finally got to it. I think it's really pretty. I love how the sprayed edges with the lotus flowers, and there is a significance of the lotus symbol here. And what I was expecting from the description was a good, twisty, complicated family saga, immigrant story. It's described, it says, Real Americans begins in New York City on the precipice of Y2K, where 22-year-old Lily Chen, an unpaid intern at a slick media company, meets Matthew. Matthew is everything she is not, poised, confident, and most notably heir to a vast pharmaceutical fortune. Lily, the only child of scientists who fled Mao's Cultural Revolution, was raised in Tampa and is flat broke. Despite their differences, Lily and Matthew fall in love. Okay, all that is accurate. And then there's a story there. And knowing this from the flyleaf, as you read that story, it's kind of sad because the next part says it's 2021 and 15-year-old Nick Chen feels like an outsider on the isolated Washington Island where he lives with his single mother, Lily. He can't shake the sense that she is hiding something. When Nick sets out to find his biological father, the quest threatens to raise more questions than it provides answers. All right, so it sounds good, right? It makes you wonder, what happened to this couple in love? Why is Lily hiding things? Does Nick find his father? What are the family questions that are raised? And I was really expecting a book that had to do with the immigrant experience. And that's not what the book is about. So Lily, the main character, she was born in the U.S. She's always lived here. She doesn't even speak any Chinese languages. And she grew up with these scientist parents who did flee China. But she is more in the artistic field. So she has a job. I think she's a photo editor at this company. And they always seem kind of vaguely disappointed that she didn't go into something more scientific or technical. There's actually three parts of the story. There's that part, the part about the kid, and there's also a part about Lily's mother, going back to when she was young and before she left China. And all of this sounds like the recipe for something really, really good, but it just missed the mark for me in several significant ways. The main problem, and the thing that made me dislike the book, was the behavior of the characters. And the same device was used repeatedly in this book, and it's a device that drives me nuts in stories. TV stories, book stories, whatever stories. And that is when there's some sort of a conflict. A big thing comes up. Either a secret is revealed or a major difference in values comes to a head. And right when the people should just get down and dirty and thrash it out and have a big old juicy fight, instead, one of the characters just abruptly cuts everything off. A giant gate falls down. They leave the state, or they won't talk to that person anymore and don't return calls, and nobody talks to each other for 10 years. So that happens not just once, but multiple times in this book. That's how the plot moves, is the gate falling down and somebody just saying, well, no. And someone else is like, well, can we talk about this? Can I explain? Can we go over? No, it's all over. I'm just completely changing my life right now. And really abruptly, not just like somebody simmering and then they decide. No, it's like things are going along and it's like, boom. Multiple times from different characters in this book. Like the device was just used again and again. One character just bounces all over. Like, I'm not talking to my mom. I'm not talking to my dad. Now I'm talking to my mom, back with my dad. Also, every character basically has the same relationship with their parent, where the parents are inscrutable, won't answer questions. Lily and her mother are basically have the same personality, and they're completely aggravated with each other, and so is the son. Like, they're all aggravated with each other for having the exact same personality traits, which that actually is kind of realistic now that I think about it in a family. But the way that they handle it, I don't know. So the way I felt reading this book and watching it play out and how the characters acted, I felt like I felt when I read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin, which also irritated the hell out of me. So that is why the book got on my nerves and made me not like it. But there was other problems. I think the fact that the book was actually about different things than the flyleaf describes is not really a problem of the book, it's a problem of the marketing. Actually, in the plot, there was a whole bunch of stuff about scientific research, scientific ethics, medical ethics, genetics, tampering. Like, there was a whole almost science fiction plot thread that was really important in the story that's not mentioned at all. And there was even the tiniest splash of magical realism, but not until really late in the book and out of the complete blue. In a realistic book, one weird thing happens. It felt very out of place. And there was also a lot of little touches, little irritating minor things that weren't realistic. For example, Nick goes off to college. All right, he's been living an isolated life on this little island town with his mother, but she previously, in her former younger life, she did go to college. She worked in New York City, and she would have some sort of awareness of how to prepare the stuff a kid takes to college to live in a dorm. But no, she just sent him off with nothing. He gets there and he doesn't have any bedding, and he has like a bag, and that's it. So really? So I just, no. Okay. Disappointed. Bye-bye. But here's the good news. My nonfiction book is really good. The Bookshop by Evan Friss. I've gotten further along in this book. Really enjoying this history of book selling and bookshops or bookstores in America. And it is a fun way to travel through just one avenue of American history. And so the recent chapters that I've been reading were set in New York City, about the Gotham Book Mart and Booksellers Row, and then the history of the Strand Bookstore. So it was sort of a fun time travel through New York City's history via the bookstores. And it made me want to go back and visit all those places in their heyday. And here's a fun story. This one, the Gotham Book Mart, which carried on for many years but no longer exists, was run for most of its life by a woman named Frances Steloff, and she was also a champion of a number of authors who had been banned or censored. She carried banned books that she sold on the sly. She was busted numerous times for selling salacious material. And so at one point she has a friendship and a kind of a patronship of Henry Miller. And so she's trying to Tropic of Cancer. And here's what happens. In 1939 in Paris, Henry Miller, offered Steloff 20 first editions of Tropic of Cancer and 15 A Black Spring. After he negotiated a sale price of $200 for the whole lot, for a first edition, 15, oh my gosh, can you imagine how much they cost today? The transaction ran aground. Since the U.S. government had banned both books on account of their lewd nature, some called them pornographic, Steloff suggested they skirt the censors by employing a French middleman. Instead, Miller sent them directly to Gotham, only to have customs intercept the cargo. Steloff managed to get the books rerouted to Mexico, where friends happened to be vacationing, and have them smuggle the contraband to Gotham. And then she had all this stuff. If you came in, they weren't out on display. You had to ask for them, and she quizzed you with a whole bunch of questions to make sure you weren't the law, that you were really somebody who wanted the book, and maybe or maybe not, she would cough up a copy for you. So there's lots of great stories in this book. If you love bookstores and American history, I think you would really enjoy this. So that brings us to the reading of the weekend, which is sure to be much better than the recent fiction. And this is Pedro Paramo. Started it this morning. I am really liking the strange atmosphere, and I'm just going to read this and finish up my short stories this weekend and a little bit in my bookshop. I'm not adding on anything else until after I finish this, because I feel like this is a book that you need to just sort of immerse yourself into and just be in this surreal town. So I will be reading this weekend and report back next week on my experience with Pedro. And that is a buddy read with Michael Clark, aka Book of Dust. So there you have it. What's going on with you? What are you reading, watching, thinking about? I hope that you have a great weekend in store, and I will be back. I think my next video will be the final video about the short stories, 30 stories in 30 days. And the stories are all linked with internet access in the community post, and those posts, I will not be removing those posts. So if you want to go back and read any of these stories at any point, they will just be hanging out there forever for your reading pleasure. So take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.